Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Andrea and I'm back with another video helping you plan your next trip to Alaska. In today's video, I'm sharing everything you need to know to go whale watching in Alaska. Whale watching in Alaska is super fun and exciting, and I definitely recommend putting it on your Alaska bucket list. Doesn't matter if you're with a family, doesn't matter if you're traveling alone, doesn't matter whatever age you are, but I definitely recommend whale watching in Alaska. So what kind of whales can you see in Alaska? We have a ton of different whales like humpback whales, gray whales, beluga whales, fin whales, and killer whales, which are also known as orca whales. But one of the things about whale watching in Alaska is that you not only can see whales, but there are tons of other marine life. Depending on where in Alaska you are, you have chances to see sea lions, sea otters, harbor seals, puffins, bald eagles, and tons of other shorebirds. But you also have to keep in mind that no matter where you're whale watching in Alaska, it's going to be very beautiful. There are so many different landscapes that you can see, from the beautiful coastlines, the forest, and all of the insane amount of glaciers. So when is the whale watching season in Alaska? So whale watching begins in March and ends in November. So this is the time of the year where you can actually see whales migrating around Alaska. If you want to see gray whales specifically, that season is about mid-March to May. And if you want to see beluga whales, you're going to want to travel from mid-July to late September. Last year, it was late August before I first spotted beluga whales while I was driving along Turnagain Arm. The beluga whales will follow the salmon and hooligan runs that go up Turnagain Arm, and your best chances to see them are around high tide. One really good location to spot beluga whales along Turnagain Arm is actually a place called Beluga Point. You can go ahead and drive your car and park and then wait for high tide, and more than likely during the season you'll be able to see beluga whales right from your car. When is the best month for whale watching in Alaska? I highly recommend trying to go whale watching in the months of June and July. And yes, you may not be able to see beluga whales, you may not be able to see gray whales, but there are still humpback whales and killer whales that you can see during this time. And the reasons why I say that June and July are the best months to go whale watching in Alaska is simply for the weather. During this time of the year, Alaska is a lot warmer. And if you've ever been on a cruise or on a boat, you know that being on the water gets super cold. So being there during the time when it's warmer on the water is really nice and more enjoyable than being there during the time when it's like super cold and you have to wear tons of layers while you're outside on the boat, peeking out your binoculars and just trying to get a better view of the whales that are surrounding you. Mind you, people do this, and depending on when you want to travel to Alaska, it may be for other reasons outside of just whale watching, then you might want to take all that into account. But for me personally, my favorite months in Alaska are June and July because they are the warmest. Everything is beautiful and green, and it's really enjoyable to be in Alaska. Another benefit of being in Alaska during this time is the amount of daylight. So when it gets to solstice, which is about late June, we're going to see nearly 24 hours of daylight in Anchorage, and that's spread out throughout the rest of Alaska. So you can actually have more time to take a cruise or a boat tour in the morning, and then during your late nights you can still have plenty of time to go hiking or explore other parts. So that is an excellent reason to visit Alaska during the months of June or July. So another common question that people ask is if it's better to go see whales in the morning or in the afternoon. So it really doesn't matter what time of the day it is because whales are actually active throughout the day. So no matter if you're taking an early morning cruise or a midday cruise or something later in the evening, you still have plenty of chances to see whales because they remain very active. One thing that you want to keep in mind though is that typically the ocean is a lot calmer in the morning, so if you are susceptible to getting some seasickness or anything like that, then you probably want to choose a time that's earlier in the day. Where to go whale watching in Alaska? Alaska is huge and there are plenty of places to visit in general, but there are also plenty of areas to go to try to see whales. One of the most common areas to see whales is actually along the Inside Passage in Southeast Alaska. So a lot of people travel this route when they're going on cruises, and this is a very concentrated area of whales. So chances are that you are very, very, very likely to see a whale when you're on a cruise throughout the Inside Passage. So that is an area I recommend visiting if you want to see whales. Like I mentioned earlier, another way to see whales, especially beluga whales, is actually just driving along Turnagain Arm. So this is the nearest place to Anchorage, Alaska that you can see whales. To get from Anchorage to Beluga Point, it only takes about 45 minutes driving south along the Turnagain Arm or the Seward Highway. This drive is absolutely beautiful and I highly recommend driving it anyways, but if you happen to be traveling in Alaska throughout the season to spot beluga whales in Turnagain Arm, then you'll definitely want to make a couple pit stops along your way, whether you're driving more south to places like Homer or Seward. Which brings me to the next place, which is my absolute favorite for seeing whales, which is in Seward or Resurrection Bay. So Resurrection Bay is the body of water that sits outside of Seward, Alaska. This is a place I highly recommend to go see whales in Alaska, especially if you're flying into Anchorage or driving from the Alcan Highway. Every time I've been out in Seward, I've done multiple whale watching tours myself. I went sailing with my friends last summer. I've just camped in Seward and I've always seen whales. It's really easy to see whales just from the shoreline, but I highly recommend actually getting on a boat to go further into Resurrection Bay so you have more chances of seeing whales. Most often you will see humpback whales in this area, but occasionally, depending on what tour you're on, you might see a gray whale and occasionally you might see a fin whale. I've also specifically been on an orca whale cruise out in Seward before, but unfortunately I did not see orca whales at all that day, but I did see Dall's porpoise and they were just swimming with us on the boat. And I actually have a video, so I'll go ahead and link that above. It was really amazing and honestly made up for the fact that we didn't see orca whales that day. I've actually yet to see orca whales myself, so I need to get back out there in Resurrection Bay to go try to find some, and hopefully I'll be able to do that this summer. Another couple areas you might be able to see some whales are Homer or somewhere like Whittier. I personally don't suggest going to Whittier to see whales because every time I've been out there, I haven't seen any whales. It's typically more glacier driven and lots of birds. How to see whales in Alaska. So there are 3 popular ways to see whales while in Alaska. One of them is simply by driving. You can drive the Turnagain Arm, you can drive around the different coastlines, you could drive around Sitka, and chances are you might be able to see a whale, depending on the season, just from your car. Another popular way to see whales is taking a boat tour. 2 of the largest companies in South Central Alaska are Kenai Fjords Tours and Major Marine. Both are great options, and tours typically start from $80 US to $180 US per adult. Now with these tours, they're usually based on how many hours you're actually on the boat, whether it's half day or full day. That's really going to alter the price. If you do end up taking a full day tour, you'll probably get a meal included in your tour cost, and the meal usually has some sort of fish, whether it's like halibut or salmon, which is really tasty, or some other kind of meat. Then that leads me to the most popular way to see whales in Alaska, and that is cruise. And the only reason why I say this is because a lot of people do end up just cruising through Alaska. I always say if you do take a cruise through Alaska, you definitely need to do a land tour because you have not seen half of what Alaska has to offer if you're just taking the cruise. So highly, highly, highly recommend getting off the cruise, taking some land tours, or flying to Anchorage to get into some of the interior communities and the beautiful mountains and landscapes and other glaciers that you can hike to and visit. So that's all for today's video. I hope you learned something about whale watching in Alaska, and I hope I gave you some tips to plan your trip to Alaska. If you do have any questions, just go ahead and leave them in the comments below and I'll make sure to answer them. And if you did like this video, go ahead and subscribe to my channel, Andrew Kuipo Abroad. I'm sharing a lot more things on Alaska, how to travel around, hikes, and everything in between. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. But one of the best things about well, we have humpback whales, gray whales, killer whales. Whales. I've never seen one. Hey.